Hi, my name is Adriana Perez, and I'm doing my presentation on pituitary pars intermedia dysfunction in animal physiology. It's also known as PPID or Cushing's disease most commonly. It is an endocrine disorder caused by malfunction of the anterior pituitary gland that results in an oversecretion of cortisol into the bloodstream. It's most common in vertebrates, the ones that rely on the hypothalamus, pituitary gland, and adrenal cortex to mediate stress responses and hormone regulation. So PPID usually occurs in middle-aged animals. Other indications are excessive weight gain and accumulation around adipose tissue, high body temperature, sweating, just stress, hypertension. You're sick all the time, so you have a compromised immune system, high blood sugar, insulin resistance, hyperinsulinemia, which is too much insulin in the blood. Also that occurs is reproductive issues, low libido, circulation issues, excessive hair growth, hormone imbalance, and also sudden blindness and reoccurring headaches. So why is this? So the main organs that affect PPID are the hypothalamus, anterior pituitary, and the adrenal cortex. Altogether, it's the HPA axis within the body. As you can see to the right, there's the hypothalamus and pituitary in the brain and the adrenal glands in your kidneys. So the hypothalamus is basically the homeostasis hormone control center. They secrete neurohormones to stimulate or inhibit anterior pituitary hormones. It also regulates body temperature, thirst, hunger, digestion, heart rate, blood pressure, and circadian rhythm. The anterior pituitary is the master gland that controls most other endocrine glands. It produces metabolic, reproductive, and growth hormones. It also controls metabolic rate and immune responses. The adrenal cortex produces hormones that regulate vital organ and bodily functions. That includes the sodium and potassium reabsorption in the body, raises blood sugar, sweat gland stimulation when you're like in fight or flight, sex hormone synthesis, and glucocorticoid synthesis, which is cortisol, which is what we're focused on today. Basically, when a stressor is received, the hypothalamus releases corticotropin-releasing hormone, which is CRH. This stimulates the anterior pituitary to release adrenocorticotropic hormone, HCTH. The adrenal cortex then receives a signal to release cortisol from the adrenal glands into the bloodstream. It leads to a negative feedback loop to deactivate the hypothalamus and anterior pituitary from secreting more stress hormones. So what goes wrong? Step one, a stressor is received and the hypothalamus releases CRH. All good. And then the anterior pituitary, with tumorous pituitary tissue, releases excess ACTH. Then the next step, the adrenal cortex releases excess cortisol because of all the excess ACTH. And then there's just too much cortisol into the blood. The negative feedback loop that then fails to deactivate the overreactive anterior pituitary cells because there's not enough feedback inhibitory hormones to stop all of the big cell clump that is more than normal. And so it continues releasing ACTH, and that's the release of cortisol into the body. So now let's get into the physiology of PPID. Naturally, high cortisol levels inhibit DNA synthesis and the release of growth hormone, resulting in stunted growth. So young animals or humans that have PPID end up being short or skinny or have osteoporosis, so their bones don't grow properly. High cortisol levels can also stimulate glucagon secretion through gluconeogenesis, which increases insulin resistance and results in high blood sugar, which potentially causes diabetes in some cases, and also weight gain due to the storage of glucose into the fat cells. Alternatively, the body may begin to overproduce insulin to compensate, and this results in hyperinsulinemia and increase the risk of laminitis due to blood vessel constriction in the limbs. Cortisol and the accumulation of fat tissue also causes adipose tissue to secrete leptin, which suppresses appetite. So a lot of the animals with PPID will also, despite being overweight and very large, actually not eat much. In addition, during those fight or flight moments, cortisol suppresses immune responses, such as inflammation by binding to immune cells. Thus, when there's a lot of cortisol, then it can compromise the immune system long-term, which leads to higher risk of infections, sicknesses, and developing additional diseases. High cortisol levels also inhibit luteinizing hormone, which is responsible for the release of testosterone from the testes and progesterone from the ovaries, and gonadotropin-releasing hormone, which is responsible for regulating the downstream production of sex hormones. All of this causes a negative effect on reproduction. A tumor on the pituitary gland may also push on the optic chiasm, which is the point where the two optic nerves meet in the brain, and this results in blindness of both eyes and also those headaches that I was talking about. A pituitary adenoma may also disrupt the secretion of other hormones released by the pituitary gland, which I listed in one of the first slides, but we're not going to get into it. So the main causes of PPID is usually a benign tumor on the pituitary gland, which overproduces the ACTH that I was talking about in that slide showing the HPA axis. Otherwise, a malfunction of anterior pituitary and receiving negative feedback loop signals, inhibiting the release of ACTH. Test to confirm, you can take a saliva or urine sample to test the cortisol levels throughout the day. Typically, normal cortisol levels are high in the morning, and then they drop by evening, so you can go to sleep. If they're high all throughout the day, then that might be an indication that you have PPID. Another test to confirm, you can do inferior petrosinus sampling to take blood from the veins that drain from the pituitary gland and test for ACTH levels directly. You can also simply just take a CT or MRI scan to visualize the tumor cells on the pituitary gland. So this is a really cool slide. On the left side is a regular anterior pituitary gland, indicated by the thick white arrow. And then on the right, indicated by the dotted white arrow, is an adenoma on the anterior pituitary gland. The green arrows on both sides are the optic chiasm, which, as you can see on the right side, the tumor is pushing onto that chiasm and is resulting in blindness. So how do you treat PPID? You can do radiation or removal of the pituitary adenoma. As you can see on the right side down here, this guy had his surgically removed, and you can see the improvements of his body becoming slimmer and less swollen and overall a little healthier. You can also do paraglide or cyperheptadine injections to lower ACTH concentrations directly. As you can see on the horse up here, it's untreated, and then 1 month with paraglide, and then 6 months with paraglide. They look much healthier with a healthier coat, a little slimmer, and healthier feet. A slightly less effective treatment is staying on top of your nutrition, your health, and keep an active lifestyle to manage high blood sugar, high blood pressure, and prevent fat storage. You can also eat foods with reduced sodium, whole grains, high fiber, and rich in protein foods, and try to avoid processed sugars. And that's it. I hope you enjoyed. Thank you so much.